Okay, so in this video, I'm going to explain how to use the law of sines to solve for a missing side or angle in a triangle. So in this first example, we could find the measure of the hypotenuse easily by using Pythagorean theorem, right? Because it's a right triangle. Now in this triangle here, this guy's freaking out. He doesn't know how to do it because there's no right angle. Okay, but do not worry because we can use trigonometry to solve for angles and sides, even if a triangle is not a right triangle. So keep in mind, SOHCAHTOA is right triangle trig. That can only be used with right triangles, but law of sines and law of cosines, can be used with any triangle. So here is the law of sines, if you would like to pause the video and copy it down. So the sides and angles of a triangle work together in a proportion. So the sine of A over A equals the sine of B over B equals sine of C over C. Now, I might not have made this clear enough, but all the letters on the top are capital, and all the letters on the bottom are not. They're lowercase. So that just means that it's like the sine of an angle over the side equals the sine of an angle over its side equals the sine of the angle over the side. Now, these proportions are coming from this triangle, so you'll notice like big B and little b right across from each other, okay? Big A and little a right across the triangle from each other. Big C, little c right across the triangle from each other. So you'll be making proportions with a side and an angle that's like across the triangle from each other. And when you're working with a problem, you'll only be using two of these to set up a proportion and solve. You won't be plugging in like all three at one time. So I'm going to do two examples for you. In the first example, we're going to solve for a missing side, and then the second example we'll solve for a missing angle. So you'll see one of both. Okay? So here we go. We've got a side here, which is 8, and the angle, which is 30 degrees, the angle across from it. And then we have angle C, which is 55 degrees, and we're trying to solve for side C. So again, if you're kind of a visual person, it could be helpful to circle like the sides and angles that are related, and then we're just going to plug it into the law of sines. So we have the sine of 30 degrees over 8 equals the sine of 55 degrees over C. This is our variable. Well, you know how to solve a proportion. You just cross, multiply, and solve. Now, I like my answers to be as exact as possible, so I'm not going to plug anything into the calculator until the very end. So I'm going to do my algebra first. So I have the sine of 55 times 8 equals the sine of 30 times C. Now, to get my C alone, I'm going to divide both sides by the sine of 30. So this is what I'm putting in my calculator right here, okay? So I've got my calculator on. Try to make it straight for you. There you go. So I'm going to do the sine of 55 times 8. And then, hopefully you can see that. And then I'm just going to divide that. I'm dividing that by the sine of 30. And there's my answer. C equals 13.1. Okay. So if your answer didn't match mine, just make sure you're in degree mode. That's important. But there it is. I did my algebra, cross multiply, and divided, and the final answer is 13.1. Okay? Now let's do example 4 on the next page. Okay? This one we're solving for an angle. So we have two sides and one angle and the missing angle. So again, if you want to circle your side and angles that are related, and we'll set up our proportion. So we have the sine of 110 over 55 equals the sine of, you can label this as C or X, doesn't really matter, that's what we're solving for, over 20. Okay, now since we're solving for an angle and we're using trig, that means our final step will be doing the inverse sign to find the angle. Anytime you're solving for an angle using trig, you have to use the inverse function. Okay, but I'm going to do my algebra first. So when I cross multiply, I get the sine of 110 times 20 equals the sine of C times 55. Okay? Again, I'm just going to divide both sides by 55. And I'm going to put all of this right here in my calculator. Okay? So we've got sine of 110, close your parentheses, times 20. And I'm dividing that by 55. Okay, so I have 0.34. Now, 0.34 equals the sine of C. That's not our final answer. Now, to solve for angle C, you have to do the inverse sine. So, second sine, 0.34. Boom, there it is, 19.9. Now, it says round to the nearest degree, so you could just put 20 degrees as your final answer. Okay? So there you go. There's the law of sines. If you click on the next video, you will learn about the law of cosines.